Welcome to Bedtime Science. Somewhere in the world's oceans tonight, there are islands where no one lives. Empty buildings stand at the edge of the sea. Their windows face salt wind and fog. Their streets grew quiet long ago. Did you know that across the world's oceans, entire towns now sit empty, slowly being reclaimed by the sea? Tonight we explore 100 quiet facts about lost and abandoned islands. In the next quiet stretch, we will gently move through these ideas. Why island communities once packed up and left. How nature returns once people are gone. The strange birds and creatures that take over. A few islands almost no one is allowed to visit. And what these places teach us about deep time. Before we begin, if you find comfort here tonight, consider subscribing to join our quiet community. And if you are still awake, you can leave a soft comment about which lost place we should visit next. Settle in, let your breathing slow. Now let's begin. Across the oceans, entire communities have slowly vanished. They left empty buildings facing the sea. Volcanic eruptions are one of the oldest reasons. In October 1961, the Earth cracked beneath the South Atlantic island of Tristan da Cunha. A new volcanic cone rose near the only settlement. All 264 residents boarded fishing boats and sailed first to South Africa, then to England. They were one of the most isolated communities on Earth. Within days, they had been carried into modern industrial cities. After 2 years away, the islanders voted on whether to remain in England. The result was 148 in favor of returning home, with only 5 against. By November 1963, most had gone back to their volcano-altered shore. A more recent example comes from Iceland. In 2023, the eruption near Grindavik forced 3,700 residents to leave their town. Cracks split parking lots. Lava flowed through farmland. The town partly reopened in October 2024, though it remains deeply changed. Isolation alone can empty an island. When the population falls below a certain threshold, schools cannot stay open. Healthcare becomes hard to provide. Small industries shrink and then quietly collapse. When seabird guano was no longer worth harvesting for fertilizer, dozens of small Pacific islands were left behind. The communities packed up almost overnight. Other islands were emptied for war. In 1946, the United States asked the 167 inhabitants of Bikini Atoll to leave their home for nuclear testing. Between 1946 and 1958, 23 nuclear bombs were detonated on the atoll. The land was declared unsafe. The Bikinians have never permanently returned. On 1 March 1954, the Castle Bravo test exploded with the force of about 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. The blast was 3 times larger than its designers had planned. 3 islands were vaporized. Radioactive fallout spread across nearby atolls. Some islands are vanishing under rising seas. In the Solomon Islands, the ocean has risen by about 7 to 10 millimeters per year since 1993. That is nearly 3 times the global average. A 2014 study in Environmental Research Letters confirmed that at least 5 reef islands had already disappeared. Each had supported tropical forest for around 300 years. On the small island of Nuatambu, 25 families lost more than half of their habitable land between 2011 and 2014. 11 homes washed into the sea. One resident later said the water forced them up to the hilltop to rebuild their village. Storms also empty islands. Coral atolls, often only a few meters above the waves, have little defense. Clipperton Atoll in the eastern Pacific sits at an average of just 7 feet above the water. Then there is industry collapse. Japan's Hashima Island is the clearest example. The island measures only 6.3 hectares. In 1959, it housed 5,259 people, one of the highest densities ever recorded on Earth. When petroleum replaced coal in the 1960s, the mine became unprofitable. Mitsubishi closed it in January 1974. By April, the island stood empty. Even research stations are not safe from abandonment. On Deedale Island in Antarctica, a British science base was vacated in 1959. Unstable sea ice cut the scientists off from their supply ships. The buildings have stood almost unchanged since. On many abandoned islands, nature continues growing as though humanity was only temporary. The first colonizers of an empty building are invisible. Bacteria, fungi, and tiny microorganisms settle on surfaces. They slowly break down wood and concrete. Their quiet work opens small cracks for the next wave of life. Mosses and lichens come next. They need almost no soil. They can survive on bare metal or stone. As they live and die, they form a thin, organic layer that other plants can use. Grasses and weeds root in those cracks. Their roots widen the fractures over the seasons. Decades later, shrubs and small trees often grow up through roofs and upper floors. Vines do something more structural. They trap moisture against masonry. That moisture freezes and thaws with the year. Each cycle widens a fissure. Stone walls become scaffolding for the new forest. Birds may be the most important agents of recovery. They carry seeds in their guts. Their droppings spread those seeds across the land. Their colonies bring nutrients up from the open sea. Iceland's Surtsey Island emerged from underwater eruptions between 1963 and 1967. Research published in 2025 found that most of the 78 vascular plant species that were carried by birds, rather than by wind or ocean currents. By 2004, just 4 decades after Surtsey rose from the ocean, the island held about 60 plant species, 75 mosses and liverworts, 71 lichens, 24 fungi, and 89 bird species. A full ecosystem assembled itself from nothing. Seabird colonies are powerful ecosystem engineers. Their guano is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. On Surtsey, areas with gull colonies develop dense grass cover and higher soil carbon than nearby areas without birds. Saltwater speeds up the decay of concrete. The process is called chloride-induced corrosion. Chloride ions seep through the concrete and reach the steel inside. The steel rusts and expands. The expansion cracks the concrete from within. Sulfate and magnesium in seawater attack the cement itself. Carbon steel near the sea corrodes faster than steel in ordinary air. Salt particles, humidity, and changing temperatures all push the process forward. North Brother Island in New York's East River shows how quickly nature can return. Its last human residents left in 1963. Within decades, the land became dense deciduous forest. Today, great egrets, snowy egrets, and herons nest among the ruins. Barn swallows now use the abandoned hospital buildings as nesting sites. The walls that once held patients have become quiet bird habitat. An entire city built on coal surrounded by ocean now returned to wind. Hashima Island sits about 15 kilometers from the center of Nagasaki in southern Japan. From a distance, it looks like a battleship. That shape comes from its tall concrete seawall and tight cluster of buildings. Locals call it Gunkanjima, which means Battleship Island. Coal was first found there around 1810. By 1887, miners lived on the island year-round. Mitsubishi bought the land in 1890 and began large-scale digging. The island's surface area was tripled by seawall construction and land reclamation. Between 1891 and 1974, about 15.7 million tons of coal were pulled from tunnels that reached up to a kilometer below the seabed. Inside the mine, temperatures held near 30 degrees Celsius with 95% humidity. At its peak in 1959, the 6.3-hectare island housed 5,259 people. That worked out to about 835 people per hectare. In the residential district, density rose to roughly 1,391 per hectare. It was one of the most crowded places ever recorded on Earth. The mine closed in January 1974. By April, everyone was gone. Belongings were taken. Buildings, furniture, and many small objects were left exactly where they stood. For 35 years, the island was closed off. Typhoons battered the seawalls. Ocean spray ate at the concrete. Plants worked their way into every crack. In April 2009, Hashima reopened to tourists. Even now, more than 95% of the island remains off-limits because of collapse risk. Visitors walk a designated path along the seawall. In July 2015, the island became a UNESCO World Heritage Site as part of Japan's Meiji Industrial Revolution sites. The listing has led to ongoing discussions about the history of wartime labor there. The apartment buildings on Hashima were among the earliest high-rise concrete homes in Japan. They were built from the 1910s onward, designed to be dense and durable. The ocean has proven more durable still. Plants that once grew in rooftop vegetable gardens now bloom across the rubble. The artificial island, which had no greenery at all, is slowly turning green. The concrete seawall still defies the waves. Decades without maintenance have not broken it. The city behind the wall falls quietly to pieces, while the wall itself holds. A small island in fog, centuries of quiet, and a new beginning as an urban park. Poveglia is a small island in the Venetian lagoon of northern Italy. It sits between Venice and the Lido. It first appears in historical records in the year 421. The island's last regular use was a geriatric hospital. It closed in 1968. The buildings have been empty for more than 5 decades. In August 2025, the northern half of the island was granted on a 6-year concession to a Venetian Citizens Association. The group is called Poveglia per tutti, which means Poveglia for everyone. Over 4,500 Venice residents raised €460,000 to win an auction. Their plan is to turn the land into a public lagoon park. The historic center of Venice now holds under 50,000 residents, while welcoming millions of tourists each year. For local Venetians, Poveglia is a rare bit of nature managed by residents for residents. Today, the island is heavily overgrown with brush and woodland. It supports a large rabbit population. There are about 15 abandoned hospital buildings, a church, a bell tower, and several smaller structures, all in various stages of decay. The rabbits arrived during the decades since the hospital closed. They found a predator-free environment with thick cover and plenty of food. National Geographic has estimated that over 100,000 people died on Poveglia across the centuries. They were buried in plague pits on the island. Most were victims of the medieval plague epidemics that periodically swept Venice. The lagoon environment is hard on buildings. Walls face moisture, tidal change, salt air, and biological growth all at once. Researchers call it one of the most challenging decay settings for masonry anywhere in the world. A small bridge connects the two halves of the island. One half holds the ruins. The other half has already returned to fields and trees. Within a single island, you can see both stages of post-human ecology. After sunset, Poveglia sits in silence. You can only reach it by boat. From the lagoon, it looks like a dark tree-covered shape on the water. Hidden beside one of the world's great cities, an overgrown island nobody visits. North Brother Island sits in the East River between the Bronx and Rikers Island. It is 15 acres in size, now entirely covered in deciduous woodland. It has been closed to the public for decades. The island is one of 17 harbor heron islands in the New York City area. It is a designated wildlife sanctuary, monitored by the New York City Bird Alliance and the Department of Parks and Recreation. Great egrets, snowy egrets, black-crowned night herons, herring gulls, and great black-backed gulls all nest there. Barn swallows fly above the buildings through the warmer months. South Brother Island sits nearby. By 1989, it supported 784 nesting pairs of birds. The list included great egrets, snowy egrets, black-crowned night herons, and double-crested cormorants. It was one of only 2 cormorant colonies found in southeastern New York at that time. The protection from human disturbance gave these birds a quiet home in a region where suitable nesting sites are rare. The hospital ruins on North Brother are surrounded by brambles of winged sumac and honeysuckle. At the island's southern edge, an eroding slab of concrete holds an armless swivel chair. The chair faces not the water, but the vegetation that has overtaken the island. Access to the island is not permitted at this time. It exists as a nature preserve with no permanent human presence. A small patch of wild woodland and seabird colonies sits within clear sight of skyscrapers. Ecologists describe it as extraordinarily unusual. It is an urban island hosting healthy seabird colonies in one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. A small ring of coral in the vast Pacific, and the ocean's most isolated atoll. Clipperton Island is a coral atoll about 1,300 kilometers off the western coast of Mexico. That distance is roughly 800 miles by another measure. It is the only coral atoll in the entire eastern Pacific. The island averages just 7 feet above sea level. Its total land area is around 6 square kilometers. The shape is a narrow coral ring around a central brackish lagoon. Clipperton belongs to France, administered under French Polynesia. No one lives there permanently. Millions of bright orange land crabs cover the island. After a tropical storm cleared the original grassy and woody vegetation, the crabs prevented its return. They eat young plants before the plants can grow back. Today, the vegetation is sparse. There is spiny grass, low thickets, a creeping plant called Ipomoea, and stands of coconut palm. Most of these plants are believed to have been introduced by humans. Breeding seabirds include white terns, masked boobies, sooty terns, brown boobies, brown noddies, black noddies, and great frigate birds. All are listed as least concern by the IUCN. Ducks are common in the central lagoon. Clipperton's fish fauna contains 115 species. 8 of these live nowhere else on Earth. Among them are the Clipperton angelfish, the Clipperton rainbow wrasse, and the Clipperton fangblenny. Seabird numbers there have risen and fallen with introduced species. Black rats and once feral pigs devastated nesting colonies before later eradication efforts removed them. The atoll sits at the boundary between the eastern Pacific and Oceanian marine regions. About half its fish species come from each side. The island may act as a stepping stone for marine life moving between Oceania and the rest of the eastern tropical Pacific. Researchers have noted growing amounts of plastic on Clipperton's shores. Its position in ocean currents makes it a collector of debris from across the Pacific. The isolation that protects it from people also turns it into a quiet trap for our discarded material. The volcanic rock at the center of the atoll is called Clipperton Rock. It rises to about 29 meters. The rock is the last visible part of an ancient volcano. The coral ring around it formed slowly on the submerged flanks of the old volcanic peak. Some islands are places that appeared, vanished, or were simply forgotten by the world outside. Snake Island, off the coast of Brazil, has been uninhabited for decades. The Brazilian Navy keeps it closed to the public. The reason is not ruin or storm. The island is home to an estimated 2,000 to 4,000 golden lancehead pit vipers. These snakes exist nowhere else on Earth. Researchers estimate between 1 and 5 snakes per 200 square meters of forest. The golden lancehead viper evolved on the island after rising seas separated it from mainland Brazil about 11,000 years ago. Without mainland predators or prey, the snakes adapted to hunt migratory birds. They developed a fast-acting venom that stops a bird before it can fly away. Bikini Atoll is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The designation is not for natural beauty. It marks the atoll as a record of Cold War nuclear testing. The atoll is still officially uninhabited. It now hosts one of the world's most unusual dive sites. Sunken warships from the 1946 Operation Crossroads tests rest on the lagoon floor. Coral has grown over their hulls. Fish swim through their corridors. The Great Isaac Lighthouse on Great Isaac Key in the Bahamas was built in 1859. It stands 152 feet tall. Today it is abandoned. Improvements in navigation technology made resident lighthouse keepers obsolete. The tower still stands on its small, uninhabited island, reached only by boat. In Antarctica, Base W on Deedle Island was abandoned in 1959 after only 2 years of work. Unstable sea ice cut the British Antarctic Survey scientists off from their supply ships. The base has remained nearly unchanged since. Cold preserves it, more than neglect. On another remote subantarctic volcanic island, an abandoned British research station from 1955 has been studied by Australian scientists. They found wood and metal structures slowly weathering in the cold. No human is known to have set foot there since 2016. Surtsey Island in Iceland was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2008. The reason was unusual. The island earned the designation specifically because no one lives on it. Its scientific value depends on staying free of human contamination. A late 2025 study of Surtsey confirmed that birds, not wind or ocean currents, were the main spreaders of plant life. Gulls, geese, and shorebirds carried seeds in their digestive systems. That finding overturned earlier assumptions about how plants reach new volcanic islands. What does it mean to be surrounded by the sea on all sides, cut off from the wider world? Researchers in Scotland published a 2022 study on mental health in remote places. They found that mental ill health was lowest in the most remote rural areas. The very lowest rates were among people living on islands. The study pointed to social cohesion as a likely explanation. Small, geographically bounded communities tend to develop closer bonds. Island communities often live within clear physical limits. That sense of shared boundary makes social connection feel necessary. People know one another by name, by history, and by family. There is a paradox in island isolation. It can protect mental health through cohesion. It can also strain it through confinement, weather, and distance from services. Seafarers who spend months at sea describe a feeling that maritime psychologists call chronic social isolation. They feel disconnected even in the presence of others. Language barriers, ship hierarchy, and long confinement all play a part. A 2024 study found that stress, mental health problems, and loneliness are significantly higher among seafarers than in many land-based populations. Cabin fever is the everyday name for the distress of long confinement in a small space. In the seafaring industry, it is recognized as an occupational hazard. The mix of distance from loved ones and constant exposure to a featureless horizon builds slowly over time. When the people of Bikini Atoll were displaced in 1946, their losses were deeply psychological as well as physical. Their family networks, fishing traditions, and ties to specific islands were severed. Researchers describe the diaspora as a wound that has not healed across generations. The Tristan da Cunha Islanders, evacuated to England in 1961, struggled with life in a large industrial society. Despite access to modern comforts, they voted to return to their isolated volcanic island within 2 years. Psychologists who studied the case noted that identity and place attachment outweighed material comfort. Weather can enforce isolation on its own. Storms sometimes cut islands off for days or weeks. Communities describe this experience as both heavy and clarifying. The ocean becomes both barrier and presence. Long-term studies of maritime workers in the South Atlantic show that stress patterns evolve over the course of an expedition. Isolation-related stress builds differently than work-related stress. Age, family status, and prior experience all shape how a person responds. Environmental psychologists describe island life as a heightened sense of boundary between self and world. The water marks the limit of what is known and reachable. On an abandoned island, that boundary remains, but the human awareness that once felt it is gone. Some islands are formed from fire, still changing, some slowly disappearing beneath the sea. Volcanic islands form when underwater eruptions pile up lava and ash until the growing mass breaks the surface. In the early phase, building processes dominate. Once activity slows, marine erosion and slow sinking take over. Surtskin eruptions are named after Surtsey Island. They happen in shallow water when seawater meets rising magma. The reaction creates steam-driven blasts of ash. Islands built this way are often short-lived, unless later lava flows cement them in place. At its emergence in 1967, Surtsey covered about 2.7 square kilometers. By 2012, marine erosion had reduced it to 1.3 square kilometers. The island has lost about half its area in 4 decades. It will eventually return to the sea. Hawaiian volcanic islands sink under their own weight. United States Geological Survey research shows that Hilo, on the island of Hawaii, is sinking at about 4.8 millimeters per year. The downward pressure of the volcanic mass presses on the oceanic crust below. On Maui, the rate is about 1.7 millimeters per year. A 2025 study in Nature Communications found that parts of Oahu's south shore are sinking nearly 40 times faster than the island's baseline. In some places, the rate exceeds 25 millimeters per year. The cause is sediment compaction beneath areas of urban development. The life of a hotspot volcanic island follows a long arc. It erupts, grows, peaks, then slowly erodes, sinks, and disappears as it drifts away from the volcanic source. The Hawaiian Emperor Seamount chain stretches 6,000 kilometers. It shows this progression in one long line. The active island of Hawaii sits at one end. At the other end, Meiji Seamount lies submerged more than 3 kilometers beneath the North Pacific. The northern Lesser Antilles also show this pattern. Underwater researchers have found features that form only in shallow coastal environments at depths of several hundred meters. Those seamounts were once volcanic islands. They are now deeply submerged. 2 forces drive the sinking. First, the oceanic plate cools and thickens as it carries the island away from the volcanic hotspot. Second, the weight of the volcano itself presses down on the crust. Both processes are slow on human timescales, but steady on geological ones. The Kahuan seamounts in the northern Lesser Antilles were once volcanic islands. Deep-sea surveys have found erosional features that only form near sea level. The evidence suggests these seamounts have sunk by several hundred meters from their original height. Black sand beaches form when lava reaches the ocean. The thermal shock of hot rock meeting cold seawater shatters basalt into tiny fragments. The result is dense, mineral-rich black sand. These beaches are geologically young and constantly changing. Toxic volcanic gases can make an island briefly or permanently unsafe. Sulfur dioxide is the most common. The 2023 Grindavik eruption in Iceland showed how quickly ground gases and structural instability can combine to empty a town. Island erosion in the Pacific moves faster where wave energy is high and the rock is soft. Reef-protected islands erode much more slowly because the reef breaks the force of incoming waves. Islands with damaged or absent reefs disappear faster. There is a quiet hopefulness in islands where nature, released, begins again. Coral reefs recover when human pressure is removed. Research in the Hawaiian Islands has found that reefs began healing after the Second World War. Reduced fishing and partial depopulation of some areas allowed reef ecosystems to regain their complexity and cover. The return of seabirds to abandoned islands is one of the clearest signs of ecological recovery. Seabirds avoid disturbance. Their presence usually means an island has stayed quiet for a long time. Plant succession follows the same stages on islands as in any recovering land. The marine environment adds one extra pressure: salt. The first plants to grow on coastal ruins are often halophytes, species that tolerate salty soil. As soil deepens and salt influence decreases, more diverse plant communities follow. A 2025 study on vegetation in abandoned fields used a chronosequence approach. By studying fields abandoned at different times, researchers showed that nature follows predictable pathways back toward complex ecosystems, even in disturbed places. On Hashima Island, the rooftop garden plants spread far beyond their original beds. They now bloom among the rubble of the larger island. The plants that fed thousands of miners have outlasted the community they fed. Let us pause now for a quiet moment of wonder. The tide moves on a rhythm about 12 hours long. The buildings on these islands have stood for 50 to 150 years. The islands themselves are thousands to millions of years old. Humans were there for a very short time by those measures. The buildings that marked human occupation will be gone long before the islands themselves vanish beneath the sea. Salt will dissolve their steel. Roots will widen their cracks. Storms will pull down their walls. The concrete of the last century is a brief mark on surfaces shaped by volcanic fire, ocean water, and biological life over millions of years. The buildings on Hashima Island, empty since 1974, may disappear through marine corrosion and storm damage within the next several centuries. The island itself, a 6-hectare landmass 15 kilometers from Nagasaki, will exist for far longer. Volcanic material lasts on geological timescales. The seabed coal measures that once made it valuable will remain long after the last apartment block falls. The seawall may hold for generations more. The apartment blocks, already fractured and already greening, will not. The seabirds that left North Brother Island may, in time, come back. On Surtsey, 89 bird species have colonized an island that did not exist 60 years ago. On South Brother, the cormorant colonies discovered in the 1980s continue to grow. Imagine, for a moment, an empty island under moonlight. The ocean moves against a concrete seawall that still stands, though the city behind it is gone. In the ruins, a plant from someone's rooftop garden flowers in a crack in the floor. A night heron lands on a broken wall and is still. These places teach us something quiet about time. Islands are not permanent, even though they look so solid from a passing ship. Some rise from fire and shrink within decades. Some sink slowly under their own weight. Some are taken back by the ocean one season at a time. The buildings we place on them are even less permanent. They face salt, wave, wind, and root. Each year removes another small piece. The metals rust, the walls split, the forests come in. What remains is the longer rhythm, the pull of the tide, the slow movement of the seafloor, the drift of plates carrying ancient hotspots away from their source. Through that rhythm, life adjusts. Mosses settle, vines climb, birds return with seeds. Crabs and rabbits and snakes find empty rooms to live in. The empty places are not really empty. They are just quiet, in a way that human ears can sometimes overlook. Across the world's oceans tonight, there are islands where no one lives. Empty buildings stand at the edge of the sea. Their windows face salt wind and fog. Their streets grew quiet long ago. Around them in the dark, the slow work of recovery continues. Plants flower in the cracks. Birds nest in the walls. Rabbits move through overgrown paths. Crabs scurry over coral. The sea moves on as it has for millions of years. Tonight, across distant oceans, abandoned islands continue resting beneath wind, rain, and stars. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you next time on Bedtime Science.